started?
I am, but you
Okay.
can.
Chapter 10 begins on page 232, so make sure you have your either study guide, whether you want to call it study guide or outline. Be sure you have that, something to write with, and your book. We're going to be on page 232. Chapter 10 is called Using Graphic Aids. So you might go, what the heck's a graphic aid? Well, it's something that, if you think about words are text, graphic aids are going to be any kind of picture. Any kind of extra information that's given, not with words. There might be words in it, but it's information given to you in another form besides words, usually a picture. So this might be, examples might be maps, graphs, charts, pictures, or tables. So when you're previewing something that you're going to read, you should always go through, besides reading the titles and the headings and the subheadings and all of the bold words, you should also look at the graphic organizers, or graphic aids. So any pictures, you want to look at those, any maps, any charts. Why do authors put them in? Well, for one thing, it's going to help the reader. If you've heard a picture's worth 1,000 words, a lot of us actually do better when you remember in the last chapter when Megan was talking about the outline versus the study map. Yes, the outline and the study map of the different kinds of sciences. Well, different people read and learn differently, and so if you've got a graphic aid, it's just going to give you that much more information. It also helps with previewing. Like I just said, if you're previewing and you're trying to get an idea of what you're going to be reading, take a minute and look at the graphs, look at the charts, see what they say. And then when you go to read the information, it's going to help with your comprehension because you've already gotten your brain started in thinking about what you're going to read. Taps into your prior knowledge. All of this is connected. We've been talking about this all semester long. And it's good for review. So when you get done, when you're done with the chapter, stop it. If you're done with the chapter that you want to go back and review it for a quiz, it's good to look at those graphs and pictures and charts again. So I keep talking about using them. There are specific ways that are going to help you get the information even better if you follow these steps. You're going to familiarize yourself. So if you are looking at a graphic aid in a history book, for example, and you see some sort of, maybe it's a Civil War map, okay? I think you're talking about the Civil War and they might have a map of the different battles. So you're going to look at the title. It's going to give you a lot of information if you just look at the title of the map. The purpose. Why is the author telling you this? Well, in that particular case, it might be to show you the different battles and who won and where the battles were fought. A legend. That's going to give you, a lot of symbols are going to be on maps. A legend is a key. It tells you what those symbols stand for. And a lot of times, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but you'll have a map scale as well. Scan for key concepts. So if you're looking at that map, you're going to be looking for those vocabulary words that, again, might be getting you thinking about what you're going to be reading. Then after you've looked at the map, then you've done the reading, you should go back through and make sure that the two match up. If there's discrepancies or differences, if you go, wait a second, I thought in the text it told me that that battle was in, I'm not even going to go there, in a certain date, but then the map shows something different, but then something's not quite right and you need to go back and double check it. There are different types of graphic aids. Different types are going to give you different information, and authors purposefully use the different types to give you the different information because there are certain things that are, oh geez, sorry.
It's okay.
There are certain types of information that show up better depending on the kind of graphic aid. So there are maps, which we were just talking about. A lot of times it gives geographic information. There are street maps, atlases. There are also maps of different countries, different states, world maps, or there's specific maps maybe just for campus at LCC. Most maps are made with north at the top. If north isn't at the top, then they will tell you otherwise. But if you can't find, it's called a compass rose, where they have the little north, south, west, and east. If there isn't one of those listed, then assume that the north is to the top. This is where I was talking about a map scale, the legend in the map scale, so you can know the distance between two objects. Maps and graphs are the two different types of big graphic aids that your book talks about. There are three, within graphs, there are three major types. Circle or pie chart, and I'm pretty much just going off my notes, but I'm on page 236. A circle graph or a pie chart, that is when the author is trying to show something, a whole something, and how it's divided into different parts. And there's an example of it, and then there's questions in the book that we're going to be doing in class. A bar graph, an example of how that looks is on 237. A bar graph isn't going to be very detailed, but it's going to help you see the big picture of things. You've got a general comparison, think big picture for a bar graph, because it can't be super. If you look at the one on page 237, you can't get very specific. They're just showing the different areas in the birth rate. So you're not going to get super specific on that. They can run horizontally or vertically. The one in the book is horizontally, so sideways. Also, bar graphs are done this way, which is called vertical. A line graph is a little more specific. It's frequently used over time. It shows how something has changed over time. The example they use in the book, I'm on 238, is about world population and how the population has changed over time. Not the last one. The next one, the example, or the next different type of graph is charts or tables. This is when you've got large amounts of information that are organized into a reasonable way that you can understand it better. There's an example on page 239 about world vital events per time unit in 2003. We're going to talk about it in class, but I just want you to see the different types. Timeline, this is going to show the chronology of something as things change over time, but it's the same thing. For example, this is world population timeline. And the other graphic aids might be pictures, illustrations, cartoons, anything, like I said, that's going to give you more information besides just the text would be called a graphic aid. And you really need to get good at these because, like I said, a lot of people they can remember and understand things if they're written in a picture type way. The last thing I want to draw your attention to is on page 242, Secrets to Success. I'm going to read this out loud because it's an important one. Not all reading is fun or easy. I'll repeat that. Not all reading is fun or easy. One thing you need to realize in being in college, you don't get to, a lot of people say, well, I really like to read if it captures my attention. Well, yeah, we all do. We all like to do things that we like, but unfortunately life leads us to a path where we have to do things that we don't always like to do. I don't really like to grocery shop, but I have to do it. In college, you're going to be reading things that you don't really want to read, but you have to do it. It's just something that if you want to be successful in college, you have to figure out a way to wrap your head around it and be good at it. If you know this is true, you can set your goals realistically. You should expect a boring or difficult reading to take more time and energy than a more interesting reading. If you know this and accept it, you will be more likely to succeed. So the reading for chapter 10 is about the human brain. I happen to really like science, so I think it's interesting, but if you don't, you're going to feel like it's hard and it's got hard words and hard concepts. But if you recognize that before you start reading it in your groups, then it's much easier to tackle. So hang in there, and I will see you in class. Megan's yawning as I'm talking. Good for review.